welcome to Upstage Downstage, with him, Richard Platt, seated in the upper circle.
And him, Stephen Rees, typically seated in the cheap seat.
This is the Theatre Podcast, where we discuss productions we've seen,
Things we've liked,
and may not have liked,
giving our complete unprofessional
and non-biased opinions.
So grab a brew,
Take a seat,
and let's raise that curtain. On today's episode, we'll be discussing Titanic The Musical. We saw this production at Theatre Royal Nottingham on the 19th of May 2023. With music, lyrics and book by multi-award winning pair Maury Yeston and Peter Stone, the original Broadway production of Titanic The Musical won 5 Tony Awards, including Best Musical, Best Score and Best Book. This stunning production celebrates the 10th anniversary of its London premiere, where it won sweeping critical acclaim across the board. So Stephen, what's it all about?
Based on real people aboard the most legendary ship in the world, Titanic the Musical is a stunning and striking production focusing on the hopes, dreams and aspirations of her passengers, who each boarded with stories and personal ambitions of their own, all innocently unaware of the fate awaiting them. The third-class immigrants dream of a better life in America, the second-class imagine they too can join the lifestyles of the rich and famous, whilst the millionaire barons of the first class anticipate legacies lasting forever.
But first, our post-show opinion!
Titanic, the show that also sang.
The bottom of the sea is more appealing. So with all that said, let's
Set the scene!
Richard, Titanic
Stephen.
the Musical. Would you like to set the scene for us, please?
Do you want the underwater version or the afloat version? Okay, so as we walked into the auditorium, it's cliche, I'm going to use it. Basically what we saw on stage was what can only be described as a 2-leveled stage. So it was a mezzanine with a couple of staircases coming down from the right hand side as you walked in. There was already on stage was a table with a map. Well, it was a blueprint, really.
Yeah.
And there was somebody on stage just sat on a chair looking at that. And there was a scrim curtain in front of that just to make the preset look pretty, I think, really. And it was a wooden floor. And what you saw at both sides of the stage were...
But the steps were metal.
Yeah, the metal steps. But then at the back, the whole back side was a side of a ship, really, with rivets and different panels of metal. And then that was repeated down both sides of the stage on all the entrances, really. So you'd got every area covered in sort of metal cladding, really. And then there was white railings that moved about when they needed to, really.
A typical sort of HMS sort of
it's like
a boat.
The upstairs, the on the
Do you know
top
what?
of a ship,
It was
really.
very uninspired.
It was.
And also, like, you know those circular things that'll have like the ship's name on it, like to save
HMS,
yourself?
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Did you see any like
was
white
no
and
reference.
orange HMS Titanic things where
There was no
Was there
reference
any? Might not have
to
been.
the ship name or
No.
anything, or White Star Line even.
Yeah.
'Cause I think even if it had been White Star Line rather than Titanic, it'd have had more effect.
Yeah.
There was no branding
No.
to link it to the original ship, because everything was White Star Line. I've seen some of the stuff in Liverpool, and everything was branded, from the plates to the knives to the napkins, all the way through to signage, and everything had a White Star link on it.
The only signage really was the blankets that we saw at the end.
Yeah, it wasn't really
Really,
anything.
but no.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's the set. As we say, it was very uninspired.
I suppose there was two sets of stairs on stage as well from the front into the audience.
Yeah, well, that's
as well.
just part of the theatre anyway,
Yeah.
isn't it?
And it's not that you want a set like this to be glitz and glamour and stand out to be an all singing or dancing musical. It's more the fact that it just didn't feel finished. It felt like it was just almost scaffolding that had a lot of cladding put over it. Really.
Yeah, and because they decided to use the outside of the ship, or like the top deck, pretty
top
much.
deck. Yeah, really. Well,
You take away a lot of the interesting scenes inside and the decorative pieces they could have had. Like they could have easily had, depending on the budget, like walls come down and create a space within there so it would transfer to like the dining suite,
Exactly.
just so we had something different.
Definitely,
but we never got that.
No.
All we got was this bare stage with the load of like the cladding, the rails and stuff. And they just acted on this portable staircase that they just kept wheeling about the stage all the time. And that was pissing me off.
I think also in the background there was a lot of... The bit that confused me was you'd got all the cladding and the rivets at the back of stage that felt like we were not on the top deck, we were next to the ship, because the cladding that they'd used wasn't what you'd see on the top deck of a first-class travel boat. It felt like we were downstairs and this was the side of the ship at the back of the room, and it just felt a bit out of kilter, really. It just didn't feel right.
It wasn't a great design. I mean, they had all these lifeboats, but we never saw one single bloody lifeboat.
No. There's a certain line to not having props or not having stage pieces, but I felt like they had less and less and less, which then, when the ultimate end happened to the ship, I mean, no spoilers here.
No.
You know, the ship goes down. I mean, we're jumping right to the end here, but something I did notice was the only way they showed that the ship had tipped over or sank was they turned a table and a chair upside down.
Ooh.
At the end and hung hats on it.
Yeah.
And it was like, we've got a load of cast on stage, we've got meant to be a big production, and all we've ended up with is a table and chair turned upside down.
And also, which will go into the technical bit, was a bit of the top deck just raised a little.
Yeah.
To mark the end of the bow of the ship going down. If you think Pride and Prejudice, sort of, that was just a staircase.
Yeah, exactly.
And they had so much. They had a bin, they had a horse, they had all these extra little bits and bobs to show what they can do within the space. We didn't have to travel much.
And how big was their cast?
Very, very small. 5, 6 people.
Compared to this.
And this was like triple.
Yeah,
triple
exactly.
the amount.
15, 20, yeah.
Triple the amount. And it was just like a production of table and chairs.
Yeah, exactly. On wheels.
They moved the tables, they moved the chairs, and then bloody ladders. That's all it was. There wasn't anything extra going on, you know? And like the older couple, or when they were like coming out of their little cubicle apartment things, or whatever you call them, the rooms, there was like some sides that they could have used on the upper deck.
Yeah.
And had them coming out as if they were coming out of their bedrooms.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
something like that.
Because I think as well...
Or had like something come down with doors in.
If I remember at the bottom sides of this stage below the mezzanine, there was like the base of the ship curvatures onto the floor, and it was like, we're not in the bowels of the ship.
No, we're not. We're at the top.
This ship was huge, so we don't need to create the ship on stage almost. It just felt confused. It was just felt confused.
It was just a blooming mess, to be honest. We're trying to describe the set, but there was so much more that they could have done with this that they just missed every single aspect of it. I don't think it was even that creative.
No. I think you can sort of look at the subject matter and think you're restricted to what you've got, but they could have been more creative with how they created the spaces, because everything just felt like we're going to act it in this front bit. I can see how they did the class systems and why they tried to do that, but I don't feel they went far enough to create that difference.
Which is a good segue straight into the writing now.
Yeah, exactly.
Because this whole thing was very much lacking in character development and plot. When I say plot, I mean, we all know the plot of the Titanic. It's not difficult to understand that. But for us to relate to people and get to know them, we need to see the build-up of the characters and actually give a fig, really.
It's not just that, it's storytelling.
Well, that's exactly what it is.
It's like you've got a chance to create a story.
Yes.
From all these stories, but you've got to pull it into one.
The good bit about it was the fact that they added the tension every other scene about the icebergs and stuff and them getting the information, but a lot of it necessarily wasn't needed.
No.
I mean, it would have been better if they had the first act where they're building up the characters and the situations with things rumbling in the background, with people like the officers running to and fro in the background, you know, because something's occurring.
Yeah.
And then in the second act, after they've discovered the iceberg, that's when everything starts getting a bit more heated up and stuff.
Exactly.
You know, because then we would have actually cared about these characters. I can't. We've seen it today. I cannot remember what any of these characters were.
No.
What the differences was.
No.
They were like you say, 3 separate, the first class, second class, and third class people.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what happened.
But it's like they tried to highlight...
There were like 3 Irish sisters and a brother,
but
maybe.
they tried to highlight certain characters within those class systems.
Yeah.
But then, because we were spending time on each class system, you never really got time to understand those characters within that. You got almost like dipping your toe in, but not actually understanding
It's like
their
just seeing a 2D
mix.
character, but the 2D character wasn't exactly a pin-up, so you instantly recognise them anyway.
And also, because they were mirroring some of the other characters, those basically there
they?
wasn't enough. Yeah, there was some were jumping between, like as in there were certain characters that were in the third class were also in the first class, and it was done that quick that you were like trying to work out who was important and who wasn't.
But then there was
you
third
never
class,
started
and then there
to
was staff as well.
Yeah, and you never
Yeah.
really started to understand. Well, who do I need to focus on? Where's the link to all of this?
Yeah.
And where's the crossover? Because what we didn't see was any of the crossover. We saw little bits, but it was felt separate every time. So you got no breakdown, or when you move to the, deciding who gets on the boats at the end to go to be saved, you didn't feel the struggle.
No.
You didn't feel the struggle, and there was
Yeah, I
some
was
bits fast
expecting
forwarded. There was some bits that just seemed to just jump.
They glossed over a lot of information.
Yeah.
They gave the information out in terms of, we'll play the scene because this happened, this happened, this happened.
Yeah.
It was like we've seen those plays where it's just like a bullet point of events.
Yeah, exactly. And we've got to get them out, so we've got to do
Even
them.
Red Ellen made this look
exactly. Yeah,
was more dramatic than this.
yeah, exactly. And I
And
just
this was
think,
more tragic.
I just think
think
you've got to
tragedy here was
write.
coming to see
You've
the
got to
show.
write a piece of theatre that people can follow and care about, and it's not always about making sure you include all the stories that as a writer you find important, because you might read the stories or look into the history of a piece, or to be inspired, but it doesn't mean you've got to include everything.
Yeah.
Sometimes you've got to restrain yourself and go, you know what, that's the strongest storyline. I'll touch on that one, and I'll touch on that one, and I'll touch on that one.
Well, you're right.
But this is the key one,
You're right, whatever plot point is important for
Yeah.
your characters that you're concentrating on. I mean, with this, every 5 minutes they were like cut to the people on the bridge.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
cut to telling them to speed up or slow down, go tell the engine room boys. And then you actually saw that happen where they went down and telling them to go faster.
Exactly.
Well, we didn't need to see that. That's
No.
irrelevant.
Or you show it once or maybe the last time to where it actually was significant, but you don't need to see it all the time.
No, exactly. And I think that this is where this fails for me, because it was boring.
Yeah.
It really was. The very first song bored me, and you made a comment. And the moment I took my shoes off, it was a crap one.
I knew Stephen was bored because he was fiddling with his laces and took his shoes off, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And his body language changed. I mean, I was maybe hooked because I couldn't believe what I was watching, because, I mean, we'll talk about the music and the songs shortly, but I just think from the writing perspective, it was just confused, and
It was lackluster.
I feel it was almost trying to divert from the film that everybody understands and knows. It was trying to do a new almost take on Titanic from a different perspective, but all that ended up happening was it was just a mishmash of stories that might have been found or pulled together and just thrown in a heap, and it just didn't
The thing with
feel
this,
solid.
there was no angle,
No, there wasn't.
and that's. Do you know what that is? That's key.
It is key.
To have a vision. Which angle are you going to write this story from? And there wasn't
Exactly.
one. It
No.
was just basically events that everybody knows. Bullet
was-
points of what's going on and what's happening.
Yeah.
And you just relive in those little moments.
You
So
didn't
all the
follow
little
anybody
No,
through
because all
it.
those little characters, they had their little situations. Like even the old couple, there might have been like 4 scenes that they were in, one in a meal, and then you got to know why they were there and what it was for something about their son. And then they have a bit where they're going to bed or waking up and being told the news, and then it's like, oh, I love you, I always loved you. So
Yeah, exactly.
near the very end, it's like that person's got a solo and it's like 2 minutes long singing about how they love each other. It's like, I don't care.
And because we didn't have any build up, and it's like, for me, I thought they missed something where they could have used the butler, not the butler, but is it the?
Why did he do it?
No, well, yeah, in the cabin with the
Can
lead
opener.
piping. Oh, Stephen. They should be saying a can of sardines. I just felt like there was they could have done with somebody that either was a narrator or a something. I just felt like they didn't need to display every scene. It could have been done differently. It was like
it should have been done differently. It should have been done differently. This bored me rigid.
And also something we touched on as well, this for me fits in with the writing side, is we've seen productions where musicians and like bands are integrated within the performance.
Exactly.
And to say at the end of the production, to write in the script that all the band members died or all the orchestra members died that were on the ship, and us to never actually see any musicians in this. You didn't even have the lone piper or the final scene.
The violin player.
Those moments make so much emotion by that final scene where somebody's just playing before they die, or those sort of moments. It felt so flat because you didn't have any of that.
Well, let's talk about the songs as well then, because that's one of the things that I said to you in the theatre. It's like, where were the band? Why didn't they use the band as an orchestra to play the music live?
And there should have been wandering minstrels within the room all the time, you know.
There could have been something going on.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or someone who plays the guitar or something. I don't know, but it would have elevated this a little bit more to integrate the music aspect of it. If this is a musical and they had a band playing at the end.
But to state all the musicians were lost and they used to play regularly when the ship went down and all those sorts.
Yeah, well, they played that autumn song, didn't they?
Yeah, it's just, but I felt like it's like the mezzanine area. Mezzanine. It's like the mezzanine area. Underneath, there was a lot of space, so they could have had members of a band within that, just there.
Yeah.
It didn't need to be walking around all the time, but just to make it feel less of a cavernous space that just felt dead before it even started. I think that's where that's
how I felt watching this. I was dead before it started.
Oh, you're looking a bit grey. I mean, it might have been that blue highlighter on your table, but you know.
But yeah, like we've seen productions where we've got an ensemble all in black and they're doing bits and bobs.
Exactly.
We could have had that with this, playing the musical instruments.
Yeah.
Or like a brief encounter.
Yeah.
Have the actors play the musical instruments as well as being these people.
Different characters.
Or double up and get rid of half of them. Like the officers and all that. There were so many. Were they really needed?
Yeah.
And some people are having solos that I don't feel like it needed to have them. Do you remember any of the songs?
One thing I said to Stephen is that...
Yeah,
I mean,
Over the Moon and I've Got Wind or whatever the song that was.
My view is near enough all of the songs were very much ensemble pieces rather than specific memorable songs. I mean, in the first half, something I said to you in the interval was I felt like every song had the same link to every other song because the melody sounded the same and we were just saying the words to a melody. And it was like, are we actually singing specific songs or are we just singing our lines? Because it felt like we were singing lines than actually creating songs. And this is where it wasn't even, you couldn't even define it being a play with music or a musical where there were specific musical numbers. It just didn't feel like it sat anywhere, really. It just didn't feel... Nothing was memorable.
No, it wasn't at all. The opening number should have been a strong song to set everyone up. That opening song should have been everybody's setup. So we knew every single character. Book of Mormon. Yeah. We knew every single one of those people coming in, who they were, what they were for, and why they were doing it and everything. In this one, it's so not rememberable. I don't know why. I mean, what was this that we watched?
I feel like what I feel like is what it was trying to write this production as a Sondheim musical that it really isn't. It's like trying to evoke that style of very heavy worded musicals where there's a lot of content and there's a lot of things you've got to listen to, but I don't think they realise that it's still about character work and it's still about those strong character moments and those strong character stories that make you remember or have memorable moments. I mean, at the end, there was a tableau that was like Sunday in the Park with George, and I was like, but it doesn't make any sense because we're just going to stand there. Are we reenacting the initial start of the production? Because I think that's what it was meant to be. But we did a tableau and then we disappeared off, and it just like, I just felt confused. It was a bloody mess. Yeah, and if you're going to regurgitate the song from the start, it's got to be good. And you just
I can't even remember what it was. All I
it
know
was the
was
one
I
about
was
Stonehenge
bored.
and all the other
Oh,
bits.
the one with the pyramids.
Yeah, the pyramids. And
I mean,
it was
what
like,
was that about?
we're grabbing words out of nowhere, and I just think, oh.
They were desperately trying to reach something to resonate or to link building something as great as the Titanic with all these other great pieces
that was
of
the
industrial
aim.
things. Yeah, that was the aim.
But
why?
it just left you feeling it's not as memorable as maybe intended, and I just feel that there's been a lot of hype around this, and I really can't understand. I can't even see these songs being used in other contexts, because I look at this sort of musical, any musical, and I think, could you pull one of these songs out and know exactly where it's from if you heard it in a choir, say, singing it, or another performance, somebody doing a solo somewhere, or
Could you
you'd
imagine
straight
Bonnie
away
Langford going on stage singing one of these or whatever?
You wouldn't know where it was from.
No, exactly.
You
So
wouldn't-
what the
you
hell is she
wouldn't
singing on
even-
about bloody pyramids for?
Yeah, you wouldn't have a clue.
No.
And it's not. And I've watched a lot of musicals with a lot of different styles, serious to comedy to this, that, and the other. And I feel like this is something that just doesn't really sit anywhere. Because, I mean, back to the writing, they were trying to put little comedy moments in, but they just fell flat.
Yeah.
Ugh.
But it wasn't particularly funny, though. It was forced humour out of... I don't know, because there was no... I couldn't really tell where the characters were going.
No. I mean, I am disappointed. This is a silly note. I am really disappointed there was no song about the iceberg.
Well, exactly.
I
was expecting some interpretive dance where they came in dressed as ice cubes or icebergs.
Even the penultimate, the icebergs coming. I didn't get. We got none of that.
They should have had a mirror ball come down with a disco effect, but the mirror ball is like a great big iceberg lettuce.
Yeah.
And they could have done some disco moves or something.
Yeah.
I mean, that would have woken
it'd
up.
be as much as
there was a song called "Wake Up."
Oh yeah.
In the second act, wake up. There's the first song of the second act, wake up. And I know she's thinking, they really need to be telling people to wake up.
But not just that, it was so lacklustre. It's like, wake up. Well, we've got to wake up.
Yeah, iceberg, wake up. And that was a bit where they should be running around, coming out of the cabins because they were asleep. Oh, my God.
Talking about discos, is the dancing thrown into the lifeboats. That's the disco moment for me.
Short and sweet. The best thing about this was the choreography.
Yeah.
Even though it was a bloody hodgepodge and a right old mess, the choreography and the dance moves were good.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, the aesthetics of the actual piece, apart from the set being a little disappointing maybe, the actual cast, the aesthetics were spot on for the era and spot on for the Titanic, as in their costumes, the way they presented themselves was right. But as you say, it was the hodgepodgeness of everything else.
Yeah, yeah, and I think
style over substance.
The direction of the choreography, I should say, was spot on. But the direction for the acting left me feeling a bit, what the hell's going on here? You had lots of couples here, but they were talking to each other from each side of the stage.
Yeah,
a lot of that was going on. There was a lot of movement, a lot of bodies on the stage just to fill it up. But it felt like if you haven't got the confidence to do something, just throw everything in the space and hoping that something sticks. But there was a lot of movement, a lot of tables and chairs coming on, and they needed an extra dimension, an extra space there, but an internal space. And a smoking lounge or a dining lounge, something with walls, a cabin, something so we can get to know these characters in a different setting than just outside.
It was almost like we just got to imagine everything, but it was like you said, with all the stuff and the people on stage, I felt that was good at certain points, but then there was other points where there was hardly anybody on stage.
Yeah.
And they were doing group scenes. Yeah. And they were doing big scenes. And you've got 4 people on stage when you had 20 last time. It just felt like meet somewhere in the middle, so it always feels full. Rather than having
See, what we could have had, when they were all going on board, right, they had all those suitcases and hat case and stuff. We never saw those suitcases again until the end.
No.
Why didn't we have Tab come down so we saw their individual compartments of where they were going to sleep in and get to know them? They could have each done a musical number whilst they were unpacking their suitcases, so we got to know what was in their suitcase, what was about them, how they were, and all those little things, so we each saw more about the characters that we were going to spend time with. But instead, suitcases on, suitcases off, everyone go, and then it's back to the drawing board with the actual design of the Titanic and the captain tell the boys to hurry up and put some more coal on the fire. It was like, we're going around in circles now, but it was like showing a bit of everybody instead of focusing on certain people. Oh.
I mean, before we move on from the writing...
Well, we're on the directing now.
I know, but we need to, before we forget the writing side, I think we need to...
I've not forgot the writing side.
No, I think one thing we need to talk about is the ending, because that was
What
writing. Well, the
sink in
final
the end?
scene where we learnt all the facts and figures about the Titanic, that
Oh, yeah, you're going right to the end.
right to the end, where, yes, quite rightly, you saw all the people that were lost from the Titanic, which I thought was a nice touch, to see that board with all the names on.
Yeah.
However, we didn't necessarily need to find out all the facts and figures for the final thing of who died, how many people had died, what had happened, this, that, and the other. All the things that, as we've talked before in other episodes, you need to leave people wanting more or needing to find out more. You haven't got to tie up every solid little story in the production. Sometimes you have to leave people with wanting to know more. You can mention that people were lost or this, that, and the other, but you don't have to. We talked about the cabin boys. There was one thing where it talked about the cabin boys. 50 cabin boys were lost or whatever that were that were 14 years of age. In the production, it was written in that one of the last people on the stage before the ship went down was a cabin boy. That's enough to draw your attention to the fact that
the staff were there.
14-year-olds lost their lives. He didn't have to then tell us again.
But normally that kind of thing
And it
happens...
wasn't a music. It wasn't sung as well.
No, but that kind of thing is normally expected at the very end.
Yeah.
Right? But then everything went back up and then they started acting and doing stuff again. And they
we had
started
another
dancing
song.
and stuff.
It just felt like it went on...
It went on far too long.
Far too long.
And another point of reference is the Titanic had a sister, so there was no mention of that.
No.
There were, if they were going to focus on the designer and the engineer and stuff like that,
Yeah, exactly.
there wasn't anything mentioned about like the pressures of the White Star liner having to get out because they've had issues with the engines. There was nothing about the fire or anything like that. There was nothing about how much money they were indebted to and why it was important that the Titanic had to go. They couldn't delay it again.
Yeah, exactly.
Couldn't have already been delayed.
Yeah.
There was no pressure on that side to give an explanation as to a whole series of chain of events that led
to the Titanic leaving the dock. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. There was nothing about that. So you only got little bits of information.
Yeah, exactly.
It was just a bit pointless. But, I mean, as for the direction, it was just far too much. And why is it that they had to use those blooming ladders all the time? Those poor actors were clinging on for life.
The problem is with the production like this, when you've got a set design or you've got ladders and somebody comes up with an idea, if you overuse that idea, it becomes throwaway. It doesn't become special. It becomes
irritating.
Annoying.
Yeah.
It becomes repetitive, and there was no levels to it. It was like, and there were certain times where 1 minute we're using it to conduct a band that there wasn't.
Yes.
And the next minute we were using it as the turret that was used to identify the iceberg coming along. But the problem is with that, it didn't feel grand enough for them to be high enough to see that iceberg. If they'd have flown the guy in from above to just be up above stage or something, just because these ships were big. We're not talking something that was small. And I just felt the elements that needed to feel bigger just felt tiny on a stage that you've tried to make feel grand, and it just felt confused in that way.
I think they used the steps as a way of, in replacement of having any flats to show different places as well. So I think they also used it as in to walk up there to get onto the ship and also walk off to say goodbye because someone didn't actually get on the ship.
But it became confusing because you're like, are we on the ship or on the mezzanine, or are we in the back at the docks, or are we here or there?
But it got placed in 3 different sections on that mezzanine. So it's if we're going up there for something, or in the middle, or to the other side. It's like, what the heck is it used for?
It just got it got distracting, really.
Well, you didn't know where you were from
No.
one scene to the next.
No, because there was no difference in it.
No.
And it's like you'd almost expect a different set of steps for the third class, and we
Yeah.
just got the same steps and the same this and
Yeah.
the same that, and it's like the other thing was the table, wasn't it? With the
yeah.
you know, it's like we've gone from first class down to third class with the same white tablecloth,
Yeah.
which shouldn't matter, but it really does, because
The
it
only
was like, what's the point?
The only difference was the first class one, they had a nice plates and they had a centered display of
Yeah.
white flowers, and then they just took them off,
It was just-
and then they had like the commoners playing cards.
but would they have had a
stuff like that.
tablecloth?
Who knows?
Because they would have just had wooden tables. They wouldn't have even had.
But even
like,
something posh, it was very
they
like.
wouldn't have cleaned it. They
basic.
wouldn't have washed it. They'd have just had wooden
Yeah.
tablecloths.
Yeah,
They wouldn't have wooden tablecloths.
wooden tablecloths.
They've had wooden tablecloths.
Who
They'd have
knows?
It's that
Maybe.
newfangled material, that wooden tablecloth. Put that in the same machine.
Yeah, well, if they made the Titanic of that, you never know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might have stayed afloat.
But it was just so difficult to comprehend a lot of the time. And there was an element in it where, I think I've said this before, this one lady were talking about like being in a smoking room because they had a cigarette. What was the point in that scene? If it was trying to showcase that she was inside and there were...
I think it was.
But it never went anywhere. That it was not extra. It didn't add anything.
It was trying to
pinpoint a situation.
not just pinpoint a situation, but it was trying to make the space feel bigger than it was. But it just felt like pointless, rather than because I can understand why in a space where you haven't got every room there, you almost have to talk about it. But it just became confused.
It doesn't work. This is the biggest ship.
Yeah,
at the point.
You said ship, didn't you?
Ship, yes. Yeah. I mean, well, we won't talk about the production like that, but this is the biggest ship, right?
Yeah.
At that time, that was made.
Yeah.
Apart from its system. So we know that it was quite large and that it was quite vast.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily need to know that it's got this room, and that room.
No, but
if you're not going to show other little rooms, we don't need to know.
No, exactly.
You know? Cut to the chase.
I mean,
give us some character. Give us some character detail. I mean, did she have a fag?
Where was the loo? We didn't know where that was.
Over the side of the railings.
Was it? Even for first class?
Wait till you're bobbing about. Treat yourself. But I think I just got tired of those flaming stairs being overused all the time.
Oh,
it was ridiculous.
And the amount of tables shifting in and out and up and down.
Goodness.
But then there was certain parts where, like you said, I don't think there was enough set.
No, there wasn't enough set.
It was like, we'll use it in this bit, but then we don't need anything in this part. Even, you know, for me, the lacklustre part, another lacklustre part was getting in the lifeboats was quite significant because there was only 20 lifeboats for all the people out of 54, and we didn't even see a lifeboat.
There was no struggle either. There was no argument about who's getting in. No people fighting or clamouring. Or
even if we'd have had the inflated perimeter of a lifeboat,
yeah,
or something for them to sit on, or just to bring in, it would have felt real.
Yeah,
this was just a circle on the floor, with light that was meant to show, and some ropes was meant to show a lifeboat. And it's like, that was actually quite a significant part because half of the people lost their lives.
Yeah.
And you've just not done it.
What they could have done is have some sheet to represent water to show that they were like in the water at this time or hanging about as well. Do you know what I mean? They could have been so creative if they were going to be completely different in their approach. And it was like torn between ideas. I don't think they had an idea.
I think it's torn between the fact that it couldn't place itself if it was going to be stylised, where people have to fill the gaps in, so you don't need anything, or set and prop heavily laden so that you understand it and you've shown it.
Yes.
It was in between the two worlds, it wasn't one side or the other. You know, it's like I've seen Sylvia and I've seen a few that are like that where literally there's no set, nothing. But you wouldn't miss it. Whereas this, it didn't even have anywhere for them to sit in the boat, even if there was some blocks on stage or some things that just made them look like they were waiting to not die.
It feels like this production is like half-arsed. You didn't know which end's going to go down first.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? And also, whilst it did start going down and the water filled up, there was no panic, there was no rushing about, there was no screaming, there was no tilting to one side. There certainly wasn't any buckets of water being thrown on the people.
And did you ever see anybody stagger from one side to the other?
No.
When the boat was keeling, or
where was the calamity?
There was none.
It was very much, let's have a drink and get in our slippers.
But even then, the thing is, even at that point where they were having a drink, trying to make them put their lifesavers on or whatever, there was no element of even the odd hint, apart from the lights going off once.
Yeah.
They went off once. Now, I've got a feeling the electrics weren't that good in 1912. You know,
they would have gone off.
They would have gone off and flickered a lot more than just that. And they needed to instill more panic because it felt like you say, there was nothing.
And it was pitch black. Do you know what I mean? So there was nobody like scrambling around because they couldn't see.
No. And also the fast forward jump bit, which
even if there was a moon, if there was a moon, we never even got a moon.
No, we didn't even have the moonlight or, the feeling of it. The other thing was they discussed shutting off the third class and not allowing them to get out onto the deck, right?
Yeah.
So we had that whole scene where, they couldn't get out of the third class because they're all downstairs and locked away. Then we fast forwarded to a couple of scenes later where two of the people in third class are now on the first boat out.
Yeah.
And it was like, we've just had a big scene where we've discussed the fact that we've locked third class off, and yet two people have survived it. We saw nothing in between that as to how they struggle or get out. Did they fight the way out? Did they get... There was nothing. It was like, just fast forward.
And there was a bit where this woman carrying a baby, I'm sure she fell to the floor. She was pushed or something happened. Or
that was the bit where she was thrown in the boat when they had the dance scene.
Was it, yeah.
Obviously the baby bounced.
It bloody did.
A lot.
I mean, it was quite funny, but it was just ridiculous. Now, do we have anything to say before we move on to the acting?
No, I think we've done.
Moving on to our next segment, as we say, we're
here for the drama.
Bless them. They were acting their hearts out for this.
They really were, and the whole cast were performing really well. I haven't really got a bad word to say about the cast because they didn't really miss their cues. They were all in the time. They were choreographed. They met all. They didn't. There was just that one moment where they dropped the coin, where we dropped the coin. But that was. It was nothing. It was nothing compared.
I was expecting one of them to drop a shovel. To be fair, when they were chucking them
the
about.
Cast were all. There was no. I never saw a stagehand. I never saw anybody do anything other than the cast. So everybody did what they needed to do.
They were all on point.
They were all on point. Yeah, they performed and the vocals were great. I just think what lets this production down is nothing to do with the cast.
It's the content.
It's the actual content. It's the way it's written. It's nothing to do with their performance because they were all great. And there's quite a lot of really good performers in this production.
Yeah, a lot of good talent.
And bless them, I hope they get amazing gigs after this, but I just think this one is a production that
I wouldn't want to be an actor in this for a long period of time.
I would struggle to do a long run of this one.
Yeah, I'd want out as soon as I could.
It would be a gap filler.
Yeah, God, it would have to be, wouldn't it?
It would have to be, yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about the costumes and props then for a little bit. The costumes were amazing. They were finely detailed. Everyone had lots of nice things to wear. Definitely a period piece. Even the old woman had a big muff.
Yeah, and I think, she did. She got a muff out at the end.
Well, the ship's going down. Why not?
Yeah. Oh, she's got to make the most of it.
I'm surprised she didn't play the violin while she got a muff out.
Maybe the cat was in there.
The cat was out of the bag at this point.
No, and I think the other thing to say about the costumes as well is those that changed different class systems all had very indicative changes. So everything definitely went from every class system, or when they changed into being the guards, or they changed into being seamen, or they changed.
That's not a word you should be using. You know it'll set me off.
Look, I was gone when they said, "What's your name, cabin boy?" I was just hoping it said Roger.
Right, come on.
No, and I
What were you
think,
saying?
yeah, I think the whole point is that the aesthetics were right on every class system, and every the detail was there, and the change and the switch and the things like the nightgowns and the nightwear when they were on the ship and they all had the like pajamas and things like that. Everything
And
felt
told to put the
right.
life
And
jackets on
yeah,
and stuff,
everything
yeah.
felt. Even the life jackets looked right. You know, they weren't. They were very. You know, I don't think they'd
Basic.
saved many lives, to be honest. But you know, they were what they had at that time, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and in terms of props, there wasn't necessarily many props.
Not really.
Other than just a load of table and chairs
And
being
spades.
wheeled on and stuff. Yeah, and spades and dinner plates. There were useless things. Like, why even have the meal scene?
It was
That was like
trying
a
to
wasted
show
opportunity.
3 levels of class, but it didn't.
Could have done
I think
that
if you
some
didn't
other
have all the other rooms, it just felt a bit like,
Meh.
yeah.
Moving on to our next segment, as we say,
What the tech is this?
Now, the technical thing here.
Overall, it was well lit, as in there was no real bad things. However, some of the effects was something to be not believed.
Do you think they would have had a candle?
Yes.
Because we never saw any candles, did we?
No. We had electric lights that switched on the table and stuff, but
Whether they were meant to represent candles.
they
in
would
the
have,
light,
yeah, maybe.
maybe. But yeah.
But the couple of scenes where, I mean, the main scene lighting wise that really just did my head in was the final scene where the side of the top of the mezzanine lifts up and there's a flash of light to show that it's like the boat's
On its way
the
down.
boat's on its way down, and it just felt like, oh, let's move some lights away. And it didn't. There was no. It was just like so flat.
That was an odd scene.
There was no. But also
Everyone
not just.
started clapping after
But it
that,
wasn't
but then it
just an
hadn't
odd
finished.
scene. It was worse than odd, because if you have the lights going out on stage and flickering, if this is the final bit, those lights would flicker. The electrics would go mad
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah.
And then it'd go. It wasn't. It just felt like it was just like, let's do a bit of a flash, and that's it.
Yeah.
And not just that. Sound wise, the parts of this where it really let it down sound wise, there was no low rumbles of bass movement, or the when the ship was breaking, or
yeah.
when even if it was the creaks of the metal, it was like when the iceberg came in before the interval, it was just like, oh, let's switch the lights off. It
Yeah,
wasn't like a horrible noise, or
It never made you feel like it had a dent or
Yeah.
anything was the matter.
there was nothing breach. You didn't
No.
feel like the breach had happened, and this was a big noise that half the ship heard.
It should have been loud. We should have all felt it
Yeah.
in the auditorium.
And you can
And also, let me just go on about the sound. When they were shoveling the coal,
yeah.
and it was a musical number, why didn't we hear any of that actual shoveling of the coal, the
just to
actual
give the
sounds
elements,
of
yeah.
the coal? Because that could have been...
All the roar of the fire, the
Exactly.
boilers, and you
and
just got no.
The machines, the mechanical,
Yeah.
the engines and the pumps and all the pistons and stuff
And
going
that-
off.
and
it was
that's
an
where
engine
it missed
room.
those elements, because you were like, I'm still in the same space as everything else has happened, rather than using sound to take you to that other
And do
place.
you know what I thought at that time when they were in the engine room shoveling coal? That musical number, if you've ever seen Dancer in the Dark with Bjork in it,
Yeah.
right? There's a song called Carver, I think it's called
Yeah.
Carver, or I can't remember what, it's something like that, where she's in a factory and it's
Yeah.
like a shutter thing,
Yeah.
and she's got musical instruments, or it's made up of the actual machines,
Yeah.
clattering
Exactly.
and stuff like that. Something like that should have been done to build
it's-
up that kind of thing,
it's-
where it's like a song or a singer or a
Yeah.
sea shanty sort of a thing going
Exactly.
on whilst they were shoveling the coal. It
and
didn't have
using
to be.
using the mechanics to make the
Yeah.
sound. And also, I mean, there's another song Seth Lakeman did one called The Blacksmith, and that was based in a blacksmith's yard, and it was in a blacksmith's workshop where they used the anvil
Yeah.
to make the bass sound in the background. And
Yeah.
if they'd have had that element, you'd have felt like you'd gone in the depths of the boiler room, and
That would have been interesting, and also I think it would have given the director or whoever's doing this like an angle, a musical angle,
Yeah.
to use like natural elements or
Yeah,
natural
exactly.
sounds to create the actual musical number.
Exactly. And then you start separating the songs to have a feeling that they're different to everything else within the production.
Yeah.
Because everything just felt flat. It just felt one line, one note, and that's what was lost. Because I'll be honest. I wonder if that was actually a pre-recorded sound.
I was thinking that,
I was wondering if the whole backing track was pre-recorded, because there was never any nod to the orchestra at the end of the production.
Apart from when the orchestra woman or man, non-binary person, whoever, in a ponytail, came out with the stick.
Yeah.
I mean, she might have been
But
she could have been the cleaner,
and that's why I feel like it was a
unblocking the
disservice.
toilet. We don't know.
When the stage was big enough to have housed
Yeah.
them on stage,
Have them on
and it was
stage.
have them on stage and let's see them, because it'd make it feel more right for this production.
And also the SOS dude, the person with the you know, that could have been a better musical number just by using his beats.
Exactly.
Or something like that.
I know.
You know? It could have been doing...
I mean, I do
ABBA
hope
SOS. Darling, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
exactly. I know. I mean, I do hope his semaphore was right, because there was a lot of times when I was thinking,
was
is he
thinking
actually
that.
doing
I
the
don't
right
think-
semaphore code?
No, that
'Cause
wasn't at all.
I think he's just tapping away. The SOS bit was right, because I recognise that bit.
Yeah,
but the other
everything
bit
else, I don't think
didn't
it
seem
was
right
at all. It
to
just
me.
sounded...
It was just tapping away.
Yeah.
But no, I think
You've got
that
elements there of having a good musical segment
you have.
there.
And
But it was just thrown away
and I think
for easy music.
from a perspective of sound effects, it was like the gunshot at the end.
Scared everyone, though.
It scared everyone, but it was still, there was no reverb. There was no, it just felt like, oh, it's going to shoot. But don't make it loud, because we might upset Mabel and Doris at the front, you know. That's what it felt like. It was like, the second in command killed himself on the ship before it went down, and he's documented.
But again, for that, there was not necessarily a build-up to show him in a situation where he felt he had to take his own life.
It was thrown
there was no
in quick.
tension.
Yeah.
It was just, oh, this happens here. Get that.
Make
actor
sure
out
we
there
do
and
it.
Do it. Yeah.
No,
it was just.
And that for me, that final scene where we're seeing the ship tip or whatever, there was no struggle from the cast, but there was also, if there was a big loud rumble and it felt powerful, it would have got the audience. But I just felt
Where
like,
were the screams?
Exactly. Even if it was people off stage screaming to give you the effect that in the distance people had fell off the boat.
Where was the splashing of water as well?
Exactly. It was like, he talked about it, but he should have been reinforced with the sounds, because that would have then took you there. But it just felt like he was talking in a dead space, open space with, after the event rather than while it was happening.
I think we were sitting in a dead space. Yeah. And now it's time for
Rewind, Rewatch.
Rewind, Rewatch, Richard. We're here already.
Well, we really.
I would rewind and watch again if I have to. The big chorus of... Well, it's not a chorus. I suppose it's just a musical choreography number where they're all in the coats and finery doing some sort of jig and moving about. But I think that only lasted a minute.
I know which bit you mean.
I couldn't tell you what song that was.
It was in the second
so
half.
Forgettable. Or was it? I was praying for my own iceberg right ahead.
I don't want to watch it again unless it's had a complete rewrite.
It needs a rewrite.
That's my view.
Yeah. And on that bombshell,
moving on to our final segment, as we say,
Call this a show?
Summary. I think we've just done it. Rewrite. Scores then, please, Richard, for Titanic the Musical on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being a cruise of your lifetime and 1 being a show that should have sank. What's it going to be?
I'm going to give this a 5 out of 10 because the cast did perform to their best. However, the production itself needs a rewrite, and I don't feel that it stands up against a lot of the other musicals out there. There's promise, but it's going to take a lot to convince me to give it a high score.
I'm going to give it a 4. I'm just not bothered. So, what sound effect will you be choosing from the following? A complete train wreck? Tumbleweed? An audible shrug of the shoulders? A slow clap? A pleasant applause? Or a standing ovation? What will it be?
Tumbleweed. Tumbleweed, tumbleweed, tumbleweed.
And I'm going to give it a great big fat tumbleweed as well. Oh God, what was this?
So there we are. That's our discussion of Titanic the Musical. We hope you found it insightful.
If not, entertaining.
Stay tuned as we bring you more of our thoughts
And opinions.
on many theatrical delights in the future episodes. If you'd like to get in touch, email us at upstagedownsstagepod@gmail.com. You can always join in the chat to share with us your views of a production.
Also, make sure to follow, share, like and subscribe to all our channels so you get every episode the second it's released. And we hope you join us again for another instalment of
Upstage Downstage.
And 3 Tony's Awards, with music and lyrics by Maury Yeston and Peter Stone. This stunning production celebrates the 10th anniversary of its London premiere, where it won sweeping official acclaim.
What?
I couldn't say critical. Why did I say official?
I don't know, it sounded like you're saying official.
I did say official, I just said it.
No, not official, just
Official.
Official. The second class image they imagine. Sorry.
Is the dancing put being
What?
I'm ready. So there we are.
So stay tuned.
The whole core orchestra, the actual.
What?
So with all that said, let's
Set the scene.
it's going down.
What now?
Have you seen the Twitter hashtag? The at Titan Contour.
What?
If you read it right, Titan Contour.
Tit. Yeah, Titan Con.
Oh, I like my Titan Contour.
Titan
Paint it down my
Contour.
face.
That's fucking ridiculous.
Stupid,
It's
isn't
a
it?
bit like
It's like
Susan Boyle album party.
Susan's
isn't
ain't a fun
it?
party. Actually, Tumbleweed will be more exciting. I'd remember it where it came from and where it went to.
I was just seeing things just rolling.
Ooh.
Under the sea.
Under the sea.
Yeah.
That's it.